Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the field for a very special presentation. The Congressional Medal of Honor is the highest military honor bestowed upon an individual serving in our nation's military. It is commonly awarded by the President of the United States for personal acts of valor in combat that go above and beyond the call of duty. It was created to give recognition to those who have distinguished themselves in battle at the risk of their own life. Tonight, the Atlanta Braves are most honored to welcome 7 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients to tonight's game. Colonel Donald Ballard served as a corpsman in the Navy during the Vietnam War. While directing 4 Marines to carry a casualty to safety, an enemy soldier jumped out, hurled a grenade, and began firing on the men. Instantly shouting a warning to the Marines, Ballard fearlessly threw himself on the hand grenade. When it failed to go off immediately, he calmly tossed it back at the enemy. As it detonated in midair, about 30 feet away, Ballard diligently continued treating other Marine casualties. These heroic actions and selfless concern for the welfare of his companions served to inspire all who observed him during the battle. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Donald Ballard. Sergeant Gary Beitkirk was a Special Forces medic in the Army who distinguished himself during the Vietnam War. When he informed that an injured American officer was lying in an exposed position during a devastating attack, Sergeant Beitkirk immediately ran through the hail of fire. Although he was wounded, he carried the officer to a medical aid station, then began to search for and evacuate other men who had been injured. He was again wounded as he dragged a critically injured soldier to the medical bunker while trying to resuscitate him. He again refused treatment and continued his search for other casualties until he finally collapsed. Sergeant Beitkirk's devotion to his comrades at the risk of his life are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Gary Beitkirk. Major General Pat Brady received the Medal of Honor while serving as an Army medic evac pilot in the Vietnam War. He distinguished himself while commanding an ambulance helicopter in a volunteer operation to rescue wounded men from a site in heavily defended enemy territory. Despite the close-range fire, he successfully landed and evacuated 2 badly wounded soldiers. He was then called to another area where American casualties lay only 50 meters from the enemy. 2 aircraft had been shot down, and others had made unsuccessful attempts to reach this site earlier in the day. Brady made 4 flights to this embattled landing zone and successfully rescued all the wounded. On his 3rd mission of the day, he landed at a site surrounded by the enemy and rescued the remaining injured. Shortly thereafter, he was asked to land in an enemy minefield where a platoon of American soldiers were trapped. Throughout that day, Brady used 3 helicopters to evacuate a total of 51 seriously wounded men, many of whom would have perished without prompt medical treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, Major General Pat Brady. Colonel Bruce Crandall distinguished himself as an Army flight commander during the Vietnam War. His flight of 16 helicopters were lifting troops for a search and destroy mission into landing zone X-ray in the Ia Drain Valley. As Crandall landed to drop off the troops on his 5th troop lift, his unarmed helicopter came under such intense enemy fire that the ground commander ordered the second flight to abort their mission. Crandall decided to adjust his base of operations in order to deliver ammunition and evacuate wounded soldiers. While medical evacuation was not his mission, he immediately sought volunteers and led 2 aircraft to landing zone X-ray. Despite the fact that the landing zone was still under enemy fire, Crandall landed and supervised the loading of seriously wounded soldiers aboard his aircraft. That day, he completed a total of 22 flights, most under intense enemy fire. His actions provided critical resupply of ammunition and evacuation of the wounded, and were portrayed in the Mel Gibson movie, We Were Soldiers. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Bruce Snake Crandall. Colonel Joe Jackson received the Medal of Honor during the Vietnam War as an Air Force pilot on a volunteer rescue mission of a 3-man combat team. The enemy had overrun a forward outpost and established gun positions on its damaged airstrip. Displaying superb airmanship and extraordinary heroism, Colonel Jackson voluntarily landed his aircraft near the point where the combat team was reported to be hiding. While on the ground, his aircraft was the target of intense hostile fire. Once from the team was aboard, he succeeded in getting airborne and flying the team to safety. Colonel Jackson's profound concern for his fellow men at the risk of his own life is in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, from Noonan, Georgia, Colonel Joe Jackson. Sergeant Major Ron Rosser received the Medal of Honor for his actions in the Korean War. During an assault on a heavily fortified hill, Rosser charged the enemy positions, armed with only a rifle and a grenade. He silenced the first bunker with a burst from his weapon, got to the top of the hill, dispatched 2 enemy soldiers, then went down the trench, taking out 5 more as he advanced. He then hurled his grenade into a bunker and shot 2 other enemy soldiers as they emerged. After running out of ammo, he returned through enemy fire to get more ammunition and grenades and charged the hill again, calling on others to follow him. He assaulted 2 more enemy bunkers, once again ran out of ammo, obtained a new supply only to return to the hilltop for a 3rd time. During this heroic action, Rosser single-handedly killed at least 13 of the enemy. After exhausting his ammunition, he made several trips under enemy fire to help remove other injured men. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Major Ron Rosser. Sergeant Major Ken Stump received the Medal of Honor for his actions in the Vietnam War while serving as an Army squad leader on a search and destroy mission. As Sergeant Stump's company approached a village, it encountered an enemy bunker complex. During the initial contact, 3 men were injured and his unit was pinned down, preventing them from moving to their aid. Sergeant Stump left his secure position and ran through the incoming rounds to reach his wounded comrades. He picked up one of the men, carried him back to the safety of the trench, and twice more dashed forward through enemy fire to rescue the remaining two. He then organized his squad and led an assault against several enemy bunkers. But one bunker remained a serious threat. Sergeant Stump ran through fire directed straight at him toward the bunker and successfully destroyed it with hand grenades. With the elimination of his key position, his unit was able to assault and overrun the enemy. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Major Ken Stump. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a truly an honor to host the 7 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients here at Turner Field tonight. Please join the Atlanta Braves as we honor these bona fide American heroes for their bravery and selfless service to our country. Thank you, gentlemen.